Hey, what's up? This is Greg Roulette, and welcome to the second episode of the Celebrity Branding You podcast. And once again, I am joined by my good friend and partner, Mr. Nick Nanton. What's happening, man?
Same old, man. This is it's like the anniversary. We got past one episode. You know, usually we get lots of crazy ideas. If you can do it more than once, we might be starting to develop a habit here.
We might be onto something. So, in this episode, we're actually going to do a little bit of a continuation of the first episode where we talked about the business trifecta and also about your story. And in this episode, we're going to continue talking about story. It's been one of our central themes here, probably for the last year or so, maybe a little longer, about telling your story. And really, one of the things that you taught me is your story is your brand. So why don't you talk about that concept, and then we'll dig a little bit into the deeper types of stories we can tell.
Sure. I think as we get into this too, one of the most important things to realize is that if you tell your story effectively, you can create a relationship with your client and your prospect that nobody else can. And I think that's at the end of the day, and you'll see how strong that bond can really be. But yeah, I like to explain branding as just storytelling, and your brand is your story. So if I had a chalkboard here, I'd probably write brand equals story. And people try to make branding just so complicated, so convoluted, so so expensive. Really, they try to charge so much money to try to explain a very basic concept. When you think about it, your brand is your story, and how effectively you tell that story dictates really two things: how many people you can help, and how much money you're going to make. That's really all that it does. Now, some people will stop right there and go, I don't need to make any more money. That's fine, but I don't know a nonprofit or any sort of great organization that runs without money.
Right.
So if you don't need more money, someone else does. So if you have the talent to make it, you should make it, give it all away. Big fan of that. Obviously, I know you are too. We just spent a lot of time down in Mexico at the orphanage. But, so your brand is your story, and how effectively you tell that story dictates those two things: how many people you can help and how much money you can make. And when you think about branding, it's just storytelling. So as you move throughout your business, what you really want to do is figure out, how can I effectively tell my story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And marketing really plays right into this, because some of the best marketers in the entire world, they're storytellers. I mean, if you've ever been to an event and you saw a speaker on stage, I mean, if they did a 90-minute presentation, probably 60 minutes of that is storytelling. And it's the way that they influence people. So we want to talk about how story influences us to really come to a conclusion or to a decision.
Sure. So this is what's interesting. So, everyone knows you have your left brain and your right brain. Your left brain really is the analytical side of things. It's what makes things make sense. And the right side of your brain is kind of the creative side.
Right.
So I always ask people, and you know the answer. It's a loaded question, so I won't actually ask you. But think about, where would you think stories would appeal to? Well, everyone automatically says right brain, which is what I would have said, the creative side. And it's actually not true. It actually appeals to the left side of your brain, which is interesting, because what stories do for you is they actually help things make sense. Mm-hmm. So one of the examples I like is, would you rather read a textbook on the history of Scotland, or would you rather watch Braveheart, right?
Right.
And undoubtedly, most people will pick Braveheart, right?
Yeah.
And it's because your mind actually likes that story much better, because it can make sense of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where it starts to get really interesting. Whenever you tell a story, or you hear a story, your brain is released a chemical called oxytocin. Now, this is not the thing Rush Limbaugh got in trouble for. It's OxyContin. This is oxytocin. This is what they call kind of love drug sometimes. It is released. They're doing a lot of research on it right now, but it's released. They think in breast milk, it's released. It's kind of like a dopamine hit to your brain.
Right.
And basically, when it's released, it actually helps trigger trust as well. So, the research is still a little bit out on it, but the interesting thing about it is, when you hear a story, your brain, you get this love drug, so you get this euphoric feeling, and it also helps build trust. So think about that now. I'm not just marketing, I'm storytelling. And when I tell you my story, it's eliciting a chemical reaction in your brain that is helping you have a euphoric feeling, and then it's leading towards trust. Not only that, but your brain is also starting to make sense of it. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what could really be better than that, right?
Right.
Except for this. It's all on the same line. But what I love about it is this. So there's this rule called Dunbar's rule. And it's interesting. He did this research, and then also the U.S. military did this research too, and both of them came up with the same number. The most relationships anyone can have is about 150 at a time. It's about 150 relationships. That's from your spouse and your close family to, your friends that you keep up with, right?
Right.
I mean, we all have, 5,000 friends on Facebook, but I mean,
Not all
you
of us
can't-
do.
Yeah,
No,
well,
just-
you can't keep up with that many
Right,
people.
right.
It's a bad decision to have 5,000 friends
Yeah.
on Facebook, but you can't keep up with it. People always ask me like, "Oh, didn't you see on Facebook?" I'm like, dude, if I hit refresh, I just lost 2,000 posts. I mean,
Yeah.
in 30 seconds. It's kind of unreal. But so Dunbar's rule says that, and then also the U.S. military did a study. I'm not a real military guy, so I don't really understand all the terms, but roll with me on this one. Like a platoon or whatever it is, a company or something.
Yeah.
Like about the most people that was effective in a battle was 150, right?
Okay.
So here's what's cool about it. So if you watch Oprah every day, I know you do. Secret,
I know,
right?
yeah.
hear you-
I sneak
hear-
out.
I hear you up in your office watching Oprah every day. Now, so if you watch something like Oprah every day, your mind starts to Oprah becomes one of your 150 relationships.
Right.
Now, I don't know where the brain really can make the difference. Obviously, I think your brain consciously knows you don't know Oprah as well as your spouse, right? That we know that. However, what's cool about this is that if you are effectively telling your story to your clients and prospects, and you're regularly dripping on them with multiple types of media. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this. Media is just a medium for telling your story, for branding.
Right.
So we use, I mean, you're the king of this. You use, CDs, DVDs, sales letters, posters, magazines, newsletters, podcasts, video. I mean,
Just the list goes on and on and on. But it's just, you're right. It's
Forever.
just a media.
It's
just
media.
yeah.
Now, think about it like this. So people turn on the TV to watch Oprah every day, or the nightly news, or whatever your example is.
Yeah.
Or even if you like watching highlights from The Daily Show every day on Hulu or something, on
Right.
your internet. Well, that's creating that person is creeping into that 150 relationships, right?
Yeah.
So as you tell your story through different types of media, you're actually becoming one of those 150. Now think about this. As you creep into that 150, the more of a good job you do telling your story, the more you become higher up on that list of 150, and you're starting to become a friend in the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so think about it this way. When you have a friend, if somebody insults them, you're insulted.
Right.
If you need something done and you know they do it, you don't call around and ask for quotes. You call your friend, right?
Right.
And the price becomes somewhat irrelevant because you trust them. So here's where it gets kind of really crazy. So there's also the concept of shared experience, right? If you and I watch like a really horrific documentary, let's say, about
Not one that you shot.
not one that I shot. I mean like scary, horrific. Like I watched. I like when I'm in the hotels to watch previews of stuff because I don't have time to watch all the movies, but I always want to see what's going on. So I watched the previews of a bunch of documentaries, and there's one called Bully that came out not that long ago.
Okay.
It's totally sad.
Right.
So if we watch this movie and it's about this kid who committed suicide like at 12 because he's being
Oh,
bullied,
yeah.
horrible. But we would walk out of that movie having a shared experience. We wouldn't even have to talk about it. We didn't talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Right.
And we just experienced something together, so we actually have a bond over that. You see it happen all the time when people get in like bad accidents or they, in a plane crash, or people
Yeah.
live like there's a total bonding that happens where they share something no one else shares, right?
Right.
I mean, we've seen this even from summer camps, right? I mean, it just
Right. Well,
happens
even
all
from the
way through
masterminds that we do when we take people to the Grammys or Napa Valley, I mean, there's that bonded, shared experience that you can't get, without being around other people and going through those things.
Precisely. So here's what happens. If you tell your story like in a documentary format like we do, we've been doing for our clients, and you tell people the story of kind of your rise and fall and rise or whatever at some point we'll have to go through the 7 major plot lines here. But,
Yeah.
But you tell people your story, then they actually come along with you on the journey of your struggle and your rise to success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the turning points in there are going to make people empathize with you, and they're going to have shared experience with you.
Right.
So at the end of the day, think about it this way. You're building your brand by telling your story. You're telling your story effectively through media. One of those medias, let's say, is a documentary or whatever, or even just through multiple media through marketing campaigns. You're telling
Yeah.
your story. You're giving your reader or your viewer a shared experience of your success
Yeah.
that's taking over one of the 150 relationships as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it actually, if you stop and think about this, and you've given them a ton of oxytocin, which you can't get arrested for, which
Nope.
is great.
Yep.
You give them a ton of oxytocin, it's building trust. Then at the end of the day, if they actually went to a competitor of yours, they would feel like they were undoing all of the hard work they had done to help you become successful because they shared the experience of your success.
Yeah.
And ingrained in their mind, you were one of their friends. So they would actually it'd be like, if you owned a barbecue place and you had your friend owned a barbecue place and your enemy owned a barbecue place, it would be like if you went to your enemy's barbecue place, you would feel like you were going and torching your friend's barbecue place.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, my wife shops at this little boutique in Lake Mary, well, the city we're in, and she's been there from the day that they did construction on the place to the day that they opened, to the party, to the first fashion show that they did, and now we're in the mall, and she's like, well, if I buy that, then that means I'm not spending money at these people's place, who I really like and respect, and they know their story, and she came along on that journey and feels like she's a part of that store being successful. So it happens in the real world every single day.
It absolutely does, and so really the whole point of that exercise is to think about, how am I telling my story? Am I revealing all the things I need to reveal? I mean, some people, obviously it's all personal, what you want to do, but the more you're willing to be relevantly personal, I mean, I don't think it's necessary to talk about, or even wise to talk about, things that just are completely irrelevant. However, let me put that in context. Even if you're selling cars and you had a messy divorce, that can still be in context, because you can talk about how, in the context of your car dealership or whatever it was, that, it was a tough time in your life and blah, 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 blah. But Dan Kennedy calls it dog whistles.
Yeah.
When you talk about something and you explain it, well, so if someone hasn't been divorced, they're going to go, oh, well, I mean, they might connect with you on the story.
Right.
If they have, but they may just blow right by it. If they have been divorced, then their ears perk up.
Or maybe if their parents were divorced, and it just creates that connection.
Well, yeah, or even if they had a friend who got a messy divorce, whatever it is. But yeah, dog whistles are the concept that when there's something that you're interested in, you perk up. When it's not, you don't. I mean, think about it this way. If you just bought a new car, the last thing you hear on the radio is new car commercials.
Right.
But if you're looking for a new car,
that's
or
all
even
you hear.
Thinking about it, like that is, I mean, you just get bombarded, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the equivalent of what a dog whistle is. So the thing is, you've got to think about how to effectively tell your story through these types of media. Email Greg or go to Celebrity Expert Marketing's website, and you can see a lot of different examples of how we do this. Maybe on the future podcast, we'll break down maybe 10 steps to effectively telling your story with different types of media.
Definitely. Love it.
Something like that could be fun. But, the real point today was, I titled this talk, and I think you guys will find it interesting, because the talk I'm starting to give, how to gain the influence of the hottest girl in school, or a vasectomy doc with knife in hand over your prospects without ever meeting them or holding a gun to their head. And that's exactly what you can do. You can get so much attention from these people because you're building a relationship, and you're letting them know, you're letting them in on your journey. You're letting them participate with you. You're helping them become a friend.
Yep.
And then ultimately they have the shared experience, and they're not going to go anywhere else. So I think even though it's short and sweet for this episode, I think if you just do that, you'll see a huge growth in your business. You'll see huge results. And we'll catch you next time on episode 3.
I think that's great. So head on over to iTunes. Make sure you leave us a review and let us know what you want to hear next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, man. Take care.